On this episode, guest host Scott Coates and I discuss the quickly expanding Bangkok train lines.
So if you're like us and find it hard to keep up with all the new train lines flying around the city, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001, having never ridden on a train before, but I'm happy to say I now consider myself a train veteran thanks to Thailand.
And I'm guest host Scott Coates, also Canadian, who came to Thailand in 1999 because I wanted to experience sitting on the back of a motorcycle taxi, eating an ice cream cone while traveling at high speed on a hot summer day and having that ice cream splash all over me. And I never left.
That's really specific. I can only imagine that's happened many times.
It happened once. If you're smart, it only happens once. But I was eating a very dark chocolate, fudgy kind of ice cream, and that shirt was for the garbage after.
That's funny. Nice.
We want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, access to the Discord server to chat with Greg and Ed and other listeners, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. In fact, we just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about the process of getting an annual physical, along with being around lots of people in a COVID world and how we felt about that, and some funny and perhaps slightly embarrassing stories from the past. So if you want to get in on those little extra bits and perks between the regular episodes, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support and become a patron.
Booyah. Hey, before we get into it, guys, because it's been such a weird and strange year, and Ed is not going to be in town, and I am not going to be in Bangkok, there's not going to be an episode next week. There won't be a bonus show or a regular show next week, but we will be back the week after that, as usual, back into the swing of things, welcoming 2022 and hopefully getting bigger, better, cleaner, safer, awesomer. So just FYI, there we go. All right. Well, on this episode, you may have noticed that Ed is on vacation, like I just said. So I am joined by our longtime friend, Scott Coates, who has come to save us in the past from the dreaded single host podcast situation and returns yet again. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks so much, Greg. I really appreciate being here. It's a lot of fun. And I'm not only a listener and a fan, but I'm also a patron myself. So if patrons should know that if you sponsor for $5,000 a month, you too can be a co-host of the show. You don't promote that, but let's be honest, this is how that happens.
We should add that tier. That'd be an awesome one. $5,000 a month. Boom.
Yeah, you can be the co-host.
That's right. Well, it actually works out well that you're here, Scott, because you and I have been talking for a long time about the topic of this show. And that is the fact that as people who live and work in the middle of Bangkok, we have very little knowledge of Bangkok's expanding train system. Now, normally that wouldn't be a big issue, but we actually take it pretty seriously. Now, first, I co-host the Bangkok podcast, and Scott, you co-host the Talk Travel Asia podcast. So while we don't claim to be the ultimate authority on Bangkok, we can confidently say that we know a lot about it. That is, unless you're talking about trains. So that needs to change. And secondly, as we'll soon find out, Bangkok is undergoing a huge transformation in slow motion. As hundreds of kilometers of new track are built over the next few years, Bangkok in 2030 is going to look a hell of a lot different than it does today. And unless we all keep on top of things, we are going to find ourselves living in a city that we don't know how to navigate. So Scott, you and I talk about this from time to time, and we finally decided to get off our butts and do something about it. So we headed out to see what we could see.
Right. Just thinking about it reminded me, I feel I was really into music, and I still am, but there was a period when I got a bit older, and all of a sudden the hot songs, I couldn't hear the hit part of them. And I started to lose track of that. And then I lived here when the SkyTrain opened. I rode it on the first day, and then they added the first part of the underground. And that's when I think about transport in Bangkok. I just think about those couple lines, and that's it. And
that's a good
you
analogy.
And I realized probably a couple years ago that, well, there's all these other lines now. Hang on. And we've never been on them, and we can't actually also probably visualize. And we let this go for a while and realized there's probably triple the amount of rail that we're thinking of in our minds. And then very soon, probably 5, 6, 7, 10 times the amount of track that we're thinking of. So we've completely lost touch with what it's like riding, the metro system in this city.
Right. And like I said, I don't claim to be like the ultimate expert or anything, but we do get emails from time to time from listeners or messages on Twitter or something like that. Like, hey, if I want to go here, or even if someone, one of my colleagues or friends asks me like, hey, I want to go up here, what do I do? And I'm telling you, like, if it's outside the green line from like En Nut to Mo Chit and down to like Krung Thon, where I live, like I'm a little bit at a loss for what to say. And especially if you start talking about the blue line, the subway line, the purple line, and we're going to go into more details on those later. But once people start asking me about how to get out to these further expanses of Bangkok suburbs, I'm hopeless, useless. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that boat. And again, I still think of the SkyTrain system running from Mo Chit in the north, next to the Famous Market, to kind of En Nut, which was the furthest station, out in the east. And then it only went to Taksin Pier on the river, and then up past Wong Wien Yai. So I still think of it kind of like Wong Wien Yai way and Mo Chit. And I know it goes all the way to Pak Nam, I think. And then I know some of the blue, like I've ridden the blue to Chinatown area and just on the edge of the ancient city. But beyond that and the airport link, like I've driven under the new stations.
Right.
I've cycled with you out by some of them, but I have no idea how they hook up or really kind of what area they're covering. Yeah, I'm lost, or I was lost, and we tried to shed a bit of light on that by finally getting on some trains.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now is Scott and I, a few weeks ago, we got out and we just sort of, I took my little recorder with us. So we're going to play some audio from our trips, and we just rode the rails for like 5 hours, and we didn't cover as much ground as we wanted to, but so we're just going to discuss the train lines, what exists now, what's coming up, and our thoughts about how to navigate it all. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to start by going over the route that we took that day. And in between, we're going to play the little short audio clips that we recorded while we were doing these routes. So I met Scott in the morning at the Silom line, the Blue Line Underground Subway MRT from Saladang to Lak Song. That is 13 stops. We went past Kuala Lumpur, through Chinatown, under the Chao Phraya River, and all the way out to the end of the line, which was 13 stops.
Mm-hmm.
So that journey took us about 30 minutes and cost us about, I can't remember exactly, 30 baht or something like that. So yeah, that was cool. And we came out of the station and we took a look around. So here's the first audio clip of me and Scott talking at that station. So I'm standing here at Lak Song Station with our good friend and co-host of the Talk Travel Asia podcast, Scott Coates. So right now we are at Lak Song Station, above ground. We started from Saladang Station and we came out here to see what's up. Now we're going to ride down to Tapra Interchange Station and head north on the underground subway Blue Line to, I guess we're going to go to Bang Su, that area, and see what happens up there. But we're going to check out the interchange stations, the pricing, the ticketing, the elevators, and things like that. Here comes the security guard to shut us down. I told you that would happen, but let's take off and get going.
Find an interchange and see how it all works.
Yeah, it cost me 33 baht to get here from Silom, Saladang. Not bad. So let's keep going. All right, so after that was done, we got back on the train, and then we wanted to go sort of north because the Blue Line now is like, it's kind of like a weird looking Q or an O with a little weird leg that sort of juts off of it a little bit, which I guess is also known as a Q.
Indeed.
So we went back on that line and we went to we took the train from Lak Song to Ta Prat, which was 6 stops. And then from there, we got on a new train to go north. And here's a little sound bite from that stop. All right, well, Scott and I have taken our first break of the day. It is not even 11 o'clock yet, and we are sharing a Chang beer. We're in a very strange little restaurant where it's got... How many people would think work in here right now?
There's at least 6 visible in the front of house to 0 customers. And it looks more like a coffee shop, but they seem to do food and surprisingly sold us a bottle of beer at 10:52 a.m., which was Greg's idea, for the record.
Yeah, why not? So we're at Top Pro Station right now, and it's a massive interchange station. And we were really curious about how this loop thing works because for those listening who can't picture the loop, the blue line, the subway line is basically, picture a big circle with one leg that juts off like a giant Q kind of thing. And I was curious about how, like, does one train go around the entire loop, including the leg, or does one train go one direction and the other train go one direction? But it's still quite hard to understand. But I think that I got to tell you, and Scott, I'm not sure if you agree with me, but if I was a foreigner and wasn't, sort of familiar with Bangkok already, I would find this really, really quite confusing because there's only signs with words. There's not a lot of pictures, and I think that would make it easier.
Yeah, and this line, we still haven't figured it out. We think some trains do this loop, but then with the extension out from it, and other ones only do the extension, so we're not clear. And the names are all very foreign, but they don't match to maps. So it would be confusing. I'd also wonder what a foreigner would be doing out here. That said, it is quick, like 20, 30 minutes from the downtown core to get out to the far west of the city outskirts to another province to see things that you definitely wouldn't be open to pre-train, right? But it is confusing.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny, I've seen 3 foreigners this morning out here. And yeah, like you said, this is definitely an area that you would normally never get out to. So kudos to that. I think when all of Bangkok's upcoming train lines are finished, it's really going to open the city up. And over the next 10 or 12 years, this might seem obvious, but I think Bangkok, like the shape of Bangkok, the physical shape of Bangkok is really going to change a lot, which I guess is good. I mean, you could probably argue gentrification on one hand, but
very good. And I spent the first 13 years of my life in Bangkok in the far eastern suburbs and Ramkhamhaeng area around the Lumsali intersection, which is about halfway to Suvarnabhumi Airport. And that's still in the sticks, but they're building a line out there now. So I think you mentioned we saw foreigners out here west of the city this morning. They're no different to me living in Ramkhamhaeng back in those times, but now they have accessibility by a train.
Definitely. And one thing I want to say too, and I think this is something we all need to keep in mind. I haven't been to a ton of cities in Western countries, but when I think of the C train in Calgary, where Scott and I are from, the C train's a dingy, dirty, scummy transportation system, man. And the trains in Bangkok, kudos to them because they're always clean. A woman comes through at every terminal station and cleans it down, picks up garbage, wipes down the handlebars with alcohol. The stations are immaculate. So yeah, it's something. It's not easy to do that. And when I think about the how terrible the C train is in Calgary, ugh.
And so an observation, we're on the blue line, which started underground for us at Silom. And then at the station we're at now, Top Pra, came above ground. So we're now in this massive above ground station. And something I think is neat compared to other parts of the world is it's hot all year here. So everything is open air. So this massive 4-level station is all open air, which is kind of a neat feature. But from here, we're going to transfer and we're going to head north. We're west of the Chao Phraya River, and we're going to follow this line and eventually go back under the Chao Phraya River heading east, and we're going to transfer to the purple line at Taphoon station, which a cleaning lady at this station just told me is one of the larger stations. And this station is also famous because when it opened a couple of years ago, there was a kilometer gap between the stations or something, which apparently they've closed now. So we're going to get the skinny on that.
Yeah, when that happened, it was crazy. Like, why did the terminal station end a kilometer away from the line it's supposed to connect to? Like, it makes no sense, but I hate TIT. Also, one thing to notice, too, if you got to go to the bathroom on your SkyTrain trip, like if you ever have some spicy food the night before or something, you might be SOL. It's hard to find a bathroom here. I know, like at the Krung Thonburi, the station I live close to, there's some public bathrooms there that are accessible. Not the best bathrooms in the world, but at least they're there. But finding a bathroom when you're inside, like when you've gone through the gates, can be probably a little bit difficult. Although I imagine in an emergency, if you make a big enough fuss, there's got to be something because the guards and all the staff have to go somewhere.
They must, but I bet you it's a staff-only toilet. And I mean, this is a massive interchange. We looked, there was no signs for toilets. And we speak enough Thai to find one, and we literally ended up in the wet market, down behind the wet market, in a little squatter. So, I mean, you could probably use the one here at the coffee shop, and that would be the obvious one. You got to come in and buy a bottle of water. But I think the message is there are not public toilets at these big interchanges. And having a beer now, I bet you by the time we get to Taphoon, we might be seeing if there's a public toilet in that area. So we'll have another toilet report for you.
All right, onward. So it's funny, like I'm thinking about it, and I still don't understand how this loop works. This loop with a little leg off of it. Like I still don't know if it's one train going around or two trains going opposite direction or one train and then it goes backwards. Like, do you understand it any better?
No, not really. And if you look at it, you mentioned it as a queue, but if you look at it in one way, it looks like an elephant's head with the trunk out to the left. But basically, yeah, it's a blue line. And without this trunk bit, it would perfectly make sense how it's just a circular route.
Right.
And we looked at multiple sort of diagrams with language explanations in various forms. And still, between two of us, we don't actually know what train goes where when you actually have to change on the circular route line. That is quite confusing, and we are unclear, but we did make it work for us that day.
All right, so from there we wanted to transfer to the purple line. So we went from Ta Phra to Taphoon. Taphoon. You have to say that properly, and that was 9 stops. So here is the last audio clip that we recorded while we were on the train going to Taphoon. So we're on the train right now. We just left from Ta Phra station. We're going to Taphoon. Be careful though, because Scott thought it was Taphoon. Taphoon. And he asked someone which train to get onto Taphoon, and they were completely baffled. So it's Taphoon. But one thing I have noticed, man, is that almost every single person that comes up to find a train at Ta Phra station needs to ask which train to go to, Thai or foreigner. It's not very easy to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. So the maps and this particular line that is a circular line, but not a circular line with an extension, is clearly baffling the locals. So it's not just us. So that's good news.
Although, hang on, announcement.
สถานีจรัญ13 13 โปรดใช้ความระมัดระวัง
โปรดใช้ความ
รถจรัญ13 station.
Yeah,
Please
although I
mind
am
the gap between train and
having
platform.
although I am having flashbacks of when I first came to Bangkok and there was only the line from En Nut to National Stadium and going up to Mall Shit, and that was confusing enough for me as a new guy. So I not my proudest moment, but again, I think if you're a tourist and you don't have a real understanding of how the city works, this would be a real confusing line to figure out. And so just to quickly round out our itinerary there, we rode the purple line all the way to the end from Taphoon to Klong Bang Pai. Then we got back on the purple line. We rode it all the way back to the blue line from Klong Bang Pai to Taphoon, 15 stops. And then we got on the blue line. We went from Taphoon to Bang Su, 1 stop. And that was the end of it. I was surprisingly beat after our journey, man. I was trained out. But I really did enjoy seeing a lot of Bangkok from the trains.
Yeah, I was knocked out because in my head, I thought we would do everything we did. Plus, we would probably at Bang Su get on the red line, the new red line that heads north,
Right.
and ride it up to Rangsit, and then probably come back. And I somehow had it in my head we would then ride one more line beyond that. So I guess what was surprising is we were reasonably efficient. And there is so much train now that I don't even think you could cover it all in one day. Like, of course, maybe from the moment they open the train in the morning till the last train you could do it. But there's enough train that we didn't cover, we covered 60% of what I thought we would.
Yeah, exactly. And that is probably 20% of the entire train lines. I'm going to go through all of the lines later and how long they are and some example trips and how long it takes. But yeah, man, I was tired at the end of that. My feet hurt, my back hurt from walking and standing a lot. So yeah, I was defeated. It reminds me of when we went to Japan, and I can't remember the name of the station, but it defeated me. I couldn't figure it out, and I left humbled. So it was a similar experience.
I was surprisingly tired too. I mean, you're just sitting there, but then you're walking between stations or platforms, and you're learning. And but yeah, it is an extensive system already, and there's a lot more to come. I was impressed with how clean the trains are, and I don't ride them much nowadays, but they do seem to keep the trains in general are very, very clean. And I also appreciate some of the lines we are on our new ones, but they're very clean. And you and I were sort of saying, if you were somebody that came to Bangkok frequently or Thailand, and let's say it's your fourth or fifth trip, it was kind of nice on the above ground. The MRT is underground, then it comes above ground.
Right.
That blue line, when it goes west, is to just actually look out and see buildings and stuff. And you actually at points got past the solid concrete expanse. We saw plantations and we saw some coconut trees and stuff like that. And then you would look and you would see the skyline probably 20K as a straight line away, like a very long way away.
Yeah, you can see all the tall buildings were just like these fuzzy little gray outlines. Like you get really way out there, man. And that's what I said in the intro. Like, once these trains are built and integrated and people get used to them, I mean, Bangkok, I think is going to just really start to grow out fast. These things are really going to change where people live and how they get around.
Yeah, it's easy to pick on Thailand, to complain about the little things sometimes. But when I realized today that it's almost 25 years, or not quite, but it'll be getting close to when the SkyTrain opened on December 5th, 1999. So we're at 22. But looking at what is out there now, they have impressive things going. So I will say, however the Thai government, through private partnerships, through government financing, has pulled this off, the amount of lines and kilometers that exist right at this moment is incredible compared to 99. And what is coming, like what is actually built and definitely coming, is incredible. And in another 5-6 years, I mean, you're talking about people coming from 30K out, that their option before was riding a horrible air-conditioned bus for an hour and a half, to, a pretty semi-comfortable, nice community experience. It opens up massive parts of the city. So I think they've done a very, very good job pulling this off.
Yeah. Good points. And listeners, just in case you wanted to look at what we're talking about here, I did put a lot of work in a few years ago to a Google map that I'm going to link to in the show notes that lists all of the existing and upcoming train lines in Bangkok. So if you want to click on that, you can get a better idea of what we're talking about. But as you mentioned, the lines, Scott, let me just read through what the existing lines are and what's coming soon, and what length they are. I'm going to drone on for a few minutes here, but indulge me. So we have the Sukhumvit line, the first line, that is 54 kilometers. Whew. We have the Silom line, the other green line, which is 15 kilometers, a bit shorter. Mm-hmm. We have the Blue Line Loop, the one that we were just talking about, which looks like a Q or an elephant head with a leg off of it. That's the subway. That's 48 kilometers.
Wow.
The purple line, which comes off of the blue subway line, is 23 kilometers. Mm-hmm. The dark red line, which is the SRT, the State Railway of Thailand line, that's 26 kilometers. The light red line is 15 kilometers. And the airport link is 30 kilometers.
And those are all open and running now.
Yes. Now, as of this show, now, of course, this show will be increasingly out of date as, the further we get away from this date that it airs. But that's what's open right now. Coming up, you have the yellow line, which is going to be a 30-kilometer monorail. And that's under construction. It's going to open in April 2022. Scheduled to open. Who knows what's going to happen. We have the pink line, which is going to be 35 kilometers. That's under construction. That's going to open in 2022, June. We have the orange line, 35 kilometers, under construction. That's going to open in 2024. That one's going to go right through the middle of the city. And then finally, we have the brown line, which is 22 kilometers. That's been approved, but hasn't yet started construction. So today, operating right now, there's 210 kilometers total. Under construction is another 100 kilometers. Planned is a further 257 kilometers. So when all of this is said and done, we're looking at 550 kilometers of trains in Greater Bangkok.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you're talking about, sort of by 2025, the brown line. Okay, let's not count that. But you're looking at, 4 or 5 years from now. I do find it incredible because you think of London's transit map or Tokyo or these big cities, like when they get real amounts of or rail lines available, and you look again at your map, you're like, well, that looks like one of these maps. And it really does cover an incredible amount of the larger Bangkok metropolis. And it probably goes, well, it definitely goes in 3 provinces and maybe 4.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And this is all based on a plan called the Mass Rapid Transit Master Plan in Bangkok Metropolitan Region, shortened to just MMAP. So this is the MMAP version that the Ministry of Transport has worked out. So
Yeah, it's exciting. And, you know, I used to live out in the eastern suburbs on Ramkhamhaeng Road, which is about halfway to Suvarnabhumi Airport for people that have come from that airport. And I lived there for 13 years, but it's terrible traffic, super high density. And so a couple of these lines we're talking about, the orange line will actually head east down Ramkhamhaeng, and it'll intersect and connect to eventually the yellow line, which will go north-south down Srinakaran Road to Banga, and then along to Lat Phrao as well in the north. So it's a game changer. When I think of living out there and the number of hours I spent coming and going in taxis and stuff, or taxis and boats and motorbikes, like just those two alone open up the whole eastern part of the city to millions of people. That's absolutely a game changer. And the pink heading west, which we were unsure if it was kind of open, I mean, that's going to be fantastic as well. It just, I'm enthusiastic. And again, there's little quirks, there's little things I can complain about. But overall, man, they've really thrown a lot at making this happen.
I just realized I left out the closest ling to me, or one of the closest line, my own hood, the gold line. I totally left that out. That's the little sort of line, that the people mover line that comes off of Krung Thonburi Station and goes by Icon Siam. But that's only like 3 kilometers long, so it's just a baby line. But it's still a line.
You know, the one thing that's a little bit of a ways from you, and I realize not everyone can have a station at their doorstep, but I think one thing that in certain areas of the city doesn't work so well for this system yet is the first and last kilometer. So years ago, I went to a transport event in Malaysia. Don't ask me why. And the crux with these systems for really being used, I mean, the SkyTrain's busy and so is the Underground at the moment, but is how easily you can cover your first kilometer getting there and your last kilometer finishing. And some of these, as we saw, seem to end and start in random spots, right? Like right in the middle of super busy intersections. And I kind of wonder, how easy is it for people to get to some of these stations to begin with, or for you to walk to a gold line? Like, it's still a bit of effort, right?
Yeah, and it's you know, and Bangkok doesn't make it easy. There's shitty sidewalks, and you know, there's broken traffic lights and cars turning left on, you know, it's not easy. And that last, like you said, the last kilometer can sometimes make all the difference. Like you know, if it's the hot season, you're going to get to the train station, you're all sweaty, or if it's a rainy season, who knows what you're going to deal with. So it's not perfect, but I think ultimately this is going to be a massive net positive for the city.
Yeah. You know, some observations that I had was, you know, we were both talking about this, is that Thailand's such a food country, and we've been to Japan, you mentioned it, is that a lot of the big stations in Japan, there's places to have food because people are on the go. So you want to grab some food, a meal. I'm not saying they need to have, you know, sidewalk carts out. That'll be okay. But there's literally really no eating opportunities on the go at any of these stations, isn't it?
That's a good point. Well, I mean, you come out of the gates in some stations and they've got a little cafe or a little Watson store or something there that you can snack at, but no real like sit down restaurants. Like, you're right, in Japan, you can come out and have an awesome bowl of curry or ramen or something like that. Japan has the bento boxes that you can take on the trains with you. There's no food in the stations, no food on the trains. They're very strict about that. So it is a bit weird, and the stations are a little bit lacking. You get out into some of the further stations that are further out that we went on, like in the Purple Line and stuff, and you come down onto the street level, and there's nothing around you. There's a couple of open fields, maybe a random streetcar or two, but there's not a lot there yet.
We did like that a lot of the MRT stations on the Blue Line we were at had a map with a radius sort of showing what's within 200 meters and what's within 500 meters of the station. That was cool. Yeah. What I'm really excited to see is how do lines that come through the new Bangsu mega railway station work? Like, is that going to be smooth process, sloppy? Because a couple of the lines come through this brand new stations that it's about to open up that are going to have in the future high-speed rail and all trains in Thailand coming through. And we were going to catch the red line north, right?
Yeah.
And we got off the blue line at Bangsu, and we walked around and looked, you know, reasonably close, and we didn't see one side or one thing for it at all. But then the next day I saw a story in the Post about that line and a picture of some guy using a ticket machine at Bangsu. So that was, I mean, we didn't see it. We couldn't find it. And I'm curious, how does that end up working? Is it seamless? Do the systems work well together?
Yeah, well, I'm curious too, because I think it's a bit unfair though, because when we were there, Bangsu was still being used as a vaccination station, and there was a huge part of it that was blocked off with a wall, and I sort of like put my fingers on the wall and peeked over a little bit because I'm tall enough to see it, and I felt like I was in a zombie movie where like the character like pulls himself up and looks over the wall and sees zombies, because it was all silent, and I pulled myself up and I saw hundreds of people sitting in chairs waiting to get their shots. But there are not a lot of lines that use that station yet, so it's not fully functioning, but it is gargantuan. And I am also curious about how well it's going to go off. If Suvarnabhum's opening in 2006 is any indication, it ain't going to go smooth, at least not for a while.
Yeah, and I hope too that I'm a lover of Hulumpong because I live just off Ramaphore Road. I'm 4.5K away. So I've done some bike trips where I'll take my bike to the train station, put it on the cargo car, and off I go. So what I'm wondering, are they going to add like the last car on a train to be one with no seats so that any train that passes through Bangsu always has some place that people can get on with, boxes or suitcases or all those things that people put on trains? Is it going to be easy enough to get on the blue line or the other lines, the red line, the pink that's going to go through there?
That's a really
and will
good
they
point.
have that car for you to bring your chickens on? Because you got to get chickens on the train, Greg. So how are people going to do that?
Well, that is a good point, because those high-speed lines up to Laos and into China are also going to go through Bangsu as well. And yeah, people don't go to China with a backpack. They have luggage, big suitcases and stuff. So
the Lao China line just opened today or yesterday.
Yeah.
Thailand hasn't started to build their high speed yet, but it will happen one day. But I mean, just think everyone coming from the provinces into Bangkok is going to start coming through Bangsu, and literally, like, can you get on an underground train with your boxes or your suitcase? Because it's not easy to do now, right? There's not
exactly. That's a really good point, and they need to sort that out. Well, talking of potential hiccups, let's get into some of the downsides.
Okay.
The biggest one, I think, is going to be the cost. And Ed and I have talked about this previously, but these are not cheap for the average Bangkok office worker. Now, we all know the minimum wage in Bangkok is about 300 baht a day-ish, and I was just thinking today, for me, I take a motorcycle taxi to the SkyTrain. I take the SkyTrain 4 stops to work, and that cost me 50 baht. Same thing home, 50 baht. So I'm spending 100 baht a day to get to work. I mean, if your salary is 300 baht a day, that's a third of your wage just to get to and from work. And I only go 4 stops. Imagine if you have to come in from the suburbs.
Right.
That's prohibitively expensive.
Absolutely. The system is not cheap here. And when I think of somewhere like Singapore, you can come from the airport to downtown for, I think, like under $2 Sing. So you're paying about 45 baht. And because a lot of these lines are private partnerships, they are very expensive, right? It can get very expensive, especially if you're taking a couple lines.
Yeah. So what I did was I went and I put out some hypotheticals here, and I wanted to see how long it would take and how much it would cost to get from one end of one line to the other end of another line. So, for example, on the Sukhumvit line, if you wanted to get from Keha way down the southeast to Kukot way up north by Don Mueang, that will take you 88 minutes and it will cost you 59 baht. That's an hour and a half, dude.
Yeah, and just under $2 US. Not that I like using US currency as the barometer, but everyone kind of understands.
Yeah, you're right. If you want to take the blue line to the purple line, so if you wanted to go from Lak Song all the way out west and go up to Klong Bang Pai way up in the north on the purple line, that will take you 59 minutes and it will cost you 70 baht because you've got to change change lines. You've got to change lines twice. You've got to change from the blue line to the blue line to get on from the train going east to the train going north, and then you got to get from the blue line to the purple line.
And that's exactly what we did on our trip.
Exactly, yeah. Now, this is an interesting one. So if you want to get from all the way north on the purple line, all the way down southeast to the end of the Sukhumvit line to Keha, this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to go from Klong Bang Pai to Taphoon. That's 32 minutes and 42 baht. You're going to have to change trains at Taphoon. You're going to have to go from Taphoon to Chatuchak subway station. That's 6 minutes and 21 baht. From there, you're going to have to change to the SkyTrain. You're going to have to get on Mo Chit, and you're going to have to go all the way down to Keha. That's 59 minutes and 59 baht. That's a total of 1 hour and 38 minutes and 122 baht.
That's also a big journey, to be fair.
It is a big journey, and I doubt a lot of people are going to be doing that for fun or every day to work. It'd probably be a lot cheaper just to move closer to your office, but those are just some examples. The biggest hiccup for me, though, is something that has bothered you and me and many others for years and years, and that is Bangkok's lack of a single journey card.
Yeah, this started over 10 years ago, I know for a fact, because I happen to know the guy that was on the first team to try and consolidate the SkyTrain and the underground cards. And after about a year and a half, he left and didn't say a lot, but just indicated that it was pure insanity trying to figure it out. And they still haven't figured it out. So despite all of this and the great building is, a unified card. Like at the end of the day, all the machinery is even Siemens. Other cities can do it. When you're trying to juggle 3 cards and then as more lines open, are you going to have 4 cards, 5 cards? I think is the crux. And that's where I think you see the difference between a developed, organized place that can get stuff done and then sort of, a mid-level, still
a lot of fingers in the pie
country where there's probably too many fingers in the pie. Exactly. And like getting that sorted out actually makes it work and make it convenient for everyone. But
Yeah, and whenever Thailand says something like, "Oh, we're going to build a nuclear power plant," I'm like, "Well, let's just work on that single journey card first. Once we get that sorted out, then we'll move on to the nukes."
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, that's our look at it. I know there's a ton of stuff still that we didn't do, and there's a ton of lines that we haven't written yet, but we're gonna work on that. And actually, to be honest, listeners, I think all of us need to work on that. If you live in Bangkok and you sort of want to avoid the city developing out from underneath you, I think we all need to get out there and ride these things and see how they connect to each other. You don't have to know all the stations off by heart, but I think it's really important if you're gonna live in Bangkok. It's good to know that where these things go and have a general idea of what to tell people when they ask, because these things are developing fast. And like Scott and I were saying, we risk becoming strangers in our own city kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm amazed at how quickly it completely got away from me. And I realized I probably need another 2 days riding the trains, because we got together on a Saturday morning, I think it was. And, I told my wife, I'll be back by 2 or 3. And all of a sudden we were at Bangsu and it was 2:00. So I need another couple days on the train. So it is a large network. I've said it many times. I'm just impressed. I almost can't believe we even have what we have and that there's so much more coming. And people should get out there and ride them, because this is a city that is so much bigger than the even large area that you think you live in. This is a massive megatron.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, like you said, you're able to see so much more of the city than most people ever do. So it's gonna be big. All right. Hey, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something that we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. And this week, because Scott is the guest, I'm going to let you ask me something.
You're going to let me ask you something. Okay, Greg,
I'm going to give you that pleasure.
This has been something that has happened to me a lot working from home during this COVID period. And we're in Thailand, as everyone knows. And I will get a phone call. It's not my contacts. And I answer, and immediately someone is speaking at high speed, rather excited, and at an extraordinary volume into the phone. And it catches me so much off guard that I'm trying to catch up with the whole thing. This is too loud. This is too fast. Who's calling?
In Thai, right?
Yeah, in Thai at absolutely full speed. And so I generally always stop them. And first thing I say is, who's calling? To which they then just start the process again of way too fast, way too loud, no mention of who's calling, what it's about. And I'll get these things like, hey, are you home right now? And I have the thing. Are you home? And I'm thinking, who is this? Like, it depends who's calling, whether I'm home or not. And so I find that people, it's funny. It's just blistering pace. And oh, hey, I was going to leave the thing. Have you seen the thing? Have you called it? Can I come drop it off? I'm in front of your apartment. I'm like, who is this? Slow down. And who's calling? What's this about? And so I'll ask them, I'll say, stop. I'm like, who's calling? And then sometimes you can get them to do that. But I find it bewildering that even for Thai people, do they actually pick up the phone and someone just launches full speed into what's happening or their request with no mention of who's calling or what it's about? And I've gotten the woman in my condo from the juristic office, bless her heart, after mentioning a couple times, I said, you know, it'd be really great when you call, if you say your name and where you're calling from. And every time now, bless her heart, she calls, hi, it's Kun so-and-so. I'm calling from I'm like, oh, great. Nice to hear from you. Hey, how can I help you out? And I love it. And so how do you feel about that?
Well, it's funny. This happened to me just the other day. And I mean, I'm of the opinion that if someone really needs to talk to me, if it's an emergency, they're going to know who I am and they'll speak English. And so what I generally do is when someone calls me and launches into that, it happened recently, actually, this last week. As I picked up the line and blah, 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 blah. I let them say their thing. I let them say it all, however long it takes. And then when they're done, I just go, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you speak in English?
Okay, that's the technique.
And then with the hope that they'll go, I just wasted my breath and a minute of my time talking to this guy, and it was a useless waste of my time. Maybe next time I should think about that and make sure I'm talking to the right person.
Hi.
I don't know if it's going to work. Yeah, but that's what I do. I just wait for them to say their thing, and I say, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you speak in English?
Well,
And then usually they just go, oh, click.
You've got a whole new process, and you could say, hi, I'm Som Chai. How can I help you? So what's your pick on it? Is it love, loathe, or live with?
I'm going to say it's right on the dividing line between loathe and live with. If I loathed it, I would just simply hang up. But I kind of enjoy the possibility that me letting them say their spiel and then realizing they're talking to the wrong person might maybe start to change the tide in some small way.
I think I support your cause, and the nice woman at my juristic office is proof.
All right, okay. I'm gonna say live with on this one, but you're obviously alone. Right?
I'm a live with, but I secretly loathe, but trying to improve everyone and change their habits for the better. Yeah, that was a lot of fun riding those trains, and now I've got to get out and ride some of the other ones. Well, a final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website and connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Totes my goats. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail online that will feature on the show, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and all that jazz. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks. On Silom Road at Saladang Subway, the Saladang MRT. And from there, we went... Silom, sorry.
Saladang is the BTS. Silom is the MRT,
BTS.
Buddy.
I'm already confused. God.
We're blowing it right out of the gates.
Gonna do the rest of the show with a big L sticker on my forehead for loser.